Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me again for another live Q&A session here on my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Angela. I am a full-time voiceover artist and audiobook narrator, and my channel is dedicated to those of you just getting started out in this wonderful, why do I have so much trouble trying to say that? Wonderful world of voiceover. I speak words good. And audiobook narration. And through my channel, I share with you tips, tricks, techniques, things that I do every day in my own voiceover business. And then we get together in these weekly chats to talk about a topic or two. If you're not new here, then you know every week we have a new poll, and that is generally the topic of the day. We'll see how it goes. And today's topic is we're talking about pricing. Get a lot of questions about pricing. So today's topic is, or poll is, how did you decide on your voiceover or audiobook pricing? And we've talked about pricing many, many times here on my channel. So I wanted to see ultimately what you guys decided, if you have decided on pricing. Just to give others an idea that there's many different ways to figure out what kind of pricing you want to start with. And again, it's always good to get multiple perspectives on any kind of answer you're looking for. If you have a question and you're looking for an answer for it, you know, take in all of the different answers to that question. Because I say that because there's me here on YouTube giving you information, but there's also a ton of other people that have channels as well that give answers to a lot of the same big questions, right? So take in all the responses and make your own decision, because there ultimately isn't like a one linear path to achieving or seeing success in this endeavor. There's a lot of different end points, right? There's a lot of different goals that people have. That everybody's situation is different. Again, there's so many variables from person to person in terms of, where they want to go in voiceover and/or audiobook narration. So get a lot of different answers to the questions that you have, and then make your own educated decision on what you want to do. And as I have discussed before, there's a few different places to get these numbers in terms of pricing, like what is suggested to charge for different types of voiceover. But again, I want to see where you guys are currently at. So How did you decide on your voiceover and or audiobook pricing? It looks like 23% of you went to the GVAA rate guide, which we've talked about many times here on my channel. 18% of you said a different rate guide. And if you have used a different rate guide that you found online, apart from or other than the GVAA rate guide, then please share which one it is so that others can go and check it out as well. Most of you said research what others charge. And that's kind of what I would say to do. And then 5% of you said a coach suggestion. So for those of you that haven't decided on what to charge or what to do, I'm hoping something said today will help at least guide you in the right direction of which rabbit hole to go down, right? But the GVAA rate guide is basically a rate guide developed by the Global Voice Acting Academy. And it is a rate guide that has been used for years, and it is very thorough and extensive. And you can find that at, if you just go to gvaa.com, I believe, no, it's Global Voice Academy, globalvoiceacademy.com. You can find the rate guide there. Actually, here, let me see if I can share my screen with you. I know I can share my screen with you. Hold on. Let me show you. All right, so this is the GVAA rate guide. So when you get there, this is what it looks like. And if you scroll down, you can actually jump to any of these sub-niches of voiceover. As you can see, again, it's very thorough. So you got digital broadcast TV, e-learning, audiobooks, IVR, animation, video games, radio broadcasts, cinema, and events. They've even got rate guides or suggestions for fees, pickups, editing. You've got promo and imaging, and then non-broadcast. So as you scroll through these, it'll give you an idea of what to charge, how that is broken down, or the usages. In terms of broadcast, they've got like how long is the client going to be using this voiceover, 3 months, 6 months, a year, broken down by national, regional, right? It's very, very thorough. So you can go into here and get a good idea of what to charge. And then also another rate guide that I mention a lot is my friend Anthony Pica's voiceover rate guide, which you could find at aviosjourney.com. And then you could just click on the tab for his rate guide. Sorry, he's got a little light box pops up there. But this one is a little bit more beginner friendly, where the GVAA rate guide is been around for a very long time. And I think it looks like it's just been recently revised to probably include some of the freelance marketplace pricing that we now are seeing more and more of. But Anthony's, this rate guide here was developed based on working online, having a remote home studio for freelance marketplaces, for, pay-to-plays, things like that. And it's also broken down by, excuse me, beginner rates, intermediate rates, seasoned, right? So it's broken down by how experienced you are, in addition to like GVAA, what the usages are, so on and so forth. So this one's a little bit more beginner friendly. And again, these are suggestions based on the different types of voiceover, and then again, your experience level. But ultimately, it's up to you what you want to use. I say, take a look at the GVAA rate guide. Take a look at other rate guides that are a little bit more beginner friendly, like the one found on A VO's Journey. And then also, if you're working on a platform, specifically platforms, if you're on freelance marketplaces like Fiverr and Upwork, or any of the other ones, Guru and voices.com, Voice123, all of those, take a look at what everybody else is charging if you're able to. specifically like Upwork and Fiverr. If you take a look at what other sellers are, like their pricing structures for different types of voiceover or sub niches of voiceover within your experience level, to get an idea of their pricing structures. Take notes, take a look at their the verbiage they use, the keywords they use, the thumbnails, all of that stuff. Take notes of all of that stuff while you're there, and that'll help you decide what to start with for yourself, because you don't want to have you want to stay pretty consistent with what everybody else is charging, right? Because you don't want to limit yourself in the beginning by being extremely, I don't want to say overpriced, but if your pricing structure is a lot more than someone else, I mean, price is always a factor for a client, right? Sometimes voiceover, well, most of the time, the voiceover is usually the last step in a project. Because if you think about it, if you've got a video production company, for example, is creating a video for a client, the most important aspect is usually the visuals, right? What is going into the video itself? What's the footage being used? Is there any text on the screen? How does it flow? What are the colors, the branding? All of those visual things are a little bit more important than the voiceover, and the voiceover is usually the last aspect. So by the time they get to the voiceover, most of the budget is probably used up by the visuals and the text and all of that stuff. So usually the lower price point is going to be a factor in who they choose for the voiceover. So if they're looking for someone in a particular experience level, price is usually going to be a factor. It just is, right? So you don't want to be too different in your pricing structure when you're just getting started, because ultimately, on freelance marketplaces or places like, the pay-to-plays, the social proof is what you really need as soon as possible. And when I say social proof, I mean reviews, right? Proof that somebody before the client currently looking at you has, said, yep, this person is legit, they do a good job, they are who they say they are, right? Someone before them has come in, hired you, and said that everything's cool. It's just like buying something on Amazon, right? You're more apt to buy something on Amazon that has a lot of 5-star reviews versus something that has maybe 1 5-star review or no reviews at all. So you want to stay competitive in your pricing, especially in the beginning, so you can get that social proof. And then once you have that social proof and you start building your book of business, and you have you're starting to see more return clients, repeat clients, referrals, things like that. And then you start to find yourself overwhelmed by the amount of work that you have. That might be a good indicator of when to increase your prices. Or if you've been at it for 6 months, a year, and then you're more confident about what you can provide or what services you can provide, that might be a good time to increase your prices. I am so froggy. Anywho, I think that's enough of that tangent. Let's go over to the comments. Let's turn this off. Let's go over to the comments. Got a lot of comments today. And again, if you have a specific question about something specific about pricing or how you came about, deciding on what pricing to use, then definitely share that. Also, again, the other rate guide, if you found or used a rate guide other than the 2 that I just showed you, then please share that as well for everyone else looking for this information. Dwight was first in, of course. Good morning, Dwight. Good morning, VO Mentor O' Mine. It is going to be a fine day in the booth for me, and I hope it is great in the booth for you and your fellow VOtians and followers. It's hot mic time. Have fun. Don't forget to like, follow, and share. Yes, please. Dwight says, regarding price, it really is up to the VO artist as to what they think their work is worth. I recommend that you start small and work up in dollars as you get better in sound quality and acting performance. And that's usually how it goes, right? It's usually how it goes with any business. You start at the lower end, so you're more competitive. You start to build that traction faster, and then you increase your pricing as your knowledge base increases and as your quality increases and all of those things, of course. Dwight then says, yes, I wish I were at Tom Selleck's level where I can get a cool mill just by voicing in those reverse mortgage commercials. But let's get real. Just saying, be realistic. This is a long haul career. Yes, as we always say, it is a marathon, not a sprint. So even if you think in the beginning that you're not charging enough, you have to think of it. And again, these are all just my personal opinions, and this is how I got to where I am. You ultimately do what you want to do. But I looked at it in the beginning as almost like a paid internship. I was earning a little bit, but I was increasing my knowledge base. I was learning new things. I was perfecting. I hate perfecting. I was enhancing my skills. I was learning all the things that I didn't yet know. I was becoming more familiar with terminology. I was still learning my DAW. I was still, working on my recording space. There was a lot that I was still working on and building, but I was still earning something, right? But that's better than just sitting stagnant, not doing anything, saying to yourself that I don't have my space dialed in yet. I don't know what I'm doing here yet, so I'm not charging anything. I'm not even going to get started until I know all of this stuff. You're not going to know all this stuff until you get in there and do it. So start charging something so you can get started, so you can get in there, jump in that pool. Start learning it by doing it. That's the best way to learn it, is to do it. So even if it's just a little bit, just know that, again, it's temporary. Once you start to build your business, you start to get that social proof, you start to, increase your competency in what you're doing and how you're doing it, then your prices are going to follow suit, right? The better you get, the more pricing, or the more your pricing is going to be. Make sense? But being realistic. Rustic Hillbilly. Good morning, Rustic Hillbilly. How you doing? What's the weather like in Oregon? Spicy Caesar. Hello, Spicy Caesar. Oh, hi, Angela. Having seen the landscape, I now charge what I'm worth. And I know what I'm worth considering my ability. When I started out, I was so green I didn't know what I was worth, and that reflected in my pricing. Now that I've been around the block a few times, I know what I'm capable of, how much work it takes, and how valuable my abilities make me. Yep. Well said, Caesar. Dylan is here. Hey, Dylan. Dylan says, unfortunately, right now I'm locked into my current prices for my returning clients, but for new clients, I've started charging more. Good. And on Fiverr, I'm no longer afraid not to accept work that's below my value. I don't need to build my portfolio anymore. Good. I'm glad, Dylan. It sounds like that you took my advice last week to heart. I'm proud of you. And in terms of past clients, depending on how long you have been working with them and how long you intend to keep working with them, you could keep your pricing what it is, especially if it's a client that's been around for a while and they send you bulk work. If you see a lot of work from them, just consider it bulk pricing, right? And keep it what it is. But at some point, you may even want to consider increasing that price too. And you can sort of prorate it. You could still make it a special discounted rate for them, but it would still need to increase in order for it to still be worth your time, right? There may come a time where you're just too busy to sacrifice an hour of your time for that old rate when you could be doing something else in that same time block that made you 5-6 times as much, right? So there may even come a time where you might need to negotiate a new discounted rate, even for past clients. And most of the time they understand that. And if they can't and they need to stick to the budget that they're at, then that may be, a big decision for you to make. I've been there. Some have stayed, some have negotiated new rates with me, and some have left. But, that's business. That's just how it goes, you know? So just putting that bug in your ear just so you're aware, Dylan. Caesar says, depending on how people see it, this revelation either came about rather early in my career or I gave myself enough time to build up confidence to be fair to myself when it comes to compensation. That said, hello everyone. Now that we've discussed pricing, I'm happy to say that my earnings have skyrocketed over the past few months. I'm happy that people are confident in my ability to hire me. And we've been telling you this for months, Caesar. I'm glad that you are finally out there and visible and getting hired. I mean, you should be. You have a very good talent and skill that should be out in the world, and I'm glad that you're doing it. Paul Landrigan is here. Good morning, good day, all from fairly sunny Dunmow, UK. I based loosely my prices of Gravy for the Brains, UK coaching training mentoring site, recommendations, aware that UK and US prices differ a lot. Yeah, Gravy for the Brain is one that I hear a lot, that people that some of my mentees or people that have reached out to me with questions have brought up Gravy for the Brain a lot. I've never taken any of their classes or training or coaching or any of that, but I am aware of them. And I think they also have a rate guide, if I'm not mistaken. They have a lot of great information on their site, but they are sort of in that same time period place as GVAA, which is prior to the COVID era of everybody having to work from home in their home studios. So, and I don't know how to say this other than it's sort of like the old guard pricing, right? Still something to consider for sure, because I don't want to say that remote or home studio voice artists should charge less, but it's a different kind of entry into voiceover, right? It's a different path born from necessity. Again, going back to when COVID happened and the world shut down, all the voice artists had to create their own home studios and work from home. They had to find work online, much like most of us within the last 5 years have had to do when we have started this business in this new path, right? So Gravy for the Brain and GVAA are sort of, pre-COVID, if that makes sense. And then sites like Anthony Pica's Rate Guide and things like that that are a little bit more online work focused is post-COVID, right? This new path of working in voiceover, if that makes sense. Dylan said, I forgot to say that I based my prices on research of other newbies to the space. I think after 2 years, 13 audiobooks, 4 YouTube channels, and a bunch of other random jobs, I'm not a newbie anymore. No, you are not, Dylan. No, you're not. Paul is here. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Good to see you. Dwight says, regarding the poll of the day, I lurked long enough and looked at what prices like ACX and Fiverr gigs were being posted at. Common sense and discussions dictated the rest. If you are honest with yourself and are observant, you can pretty much get a reasonable understanding of what you are worth and what the market will bear. This is true right through the middle of your VO career. After that, you should get some specific coaching for the big baller VO rates is a different game entirely. I do think you need coaching when it's some to understanding market distribution rates, rates, and rules, though. Yes. I mean, coaching, and I've said this many times before, I didn't get coaching until I was about a year and a half in, and I wish I would have started earlier because I'm hard-headed and I want to be self-sufficient and I wanted to teach myself everything. But it wasn't until about a year and a half in where I saw all the success, but then I plateaued. I didn't really get any higher. My reach wasn't any higher than what it was. So I said, okay, well, there must be something that I'm missing. There's some box that still yet needs to be ticked, right? There's something that I'm not doing correctly, or there's something that I'm just not seeing where I can continue to grow. So that's when I reached out for coaching. In hindsight, I wish I would have done that a whole lot sooner, because it turns out there was a whole lot that I didn't know because I didn't know that I had to know it. And there were some bad habits that I was developing because I didn't know I was doing them. So coaching sooner rather than later can definitely help you, not only with stopping from starting, new bad habits, but the coach can also help you with setting up your business, appropriately, and helping you with performance and helping you with your sound quality. They can help you with all this stuff, helping you to determine what rates to set all of your profiles at, so on and so forth. How to make a rate card or a rate guide of your own, right? Because at some point you will have clients ask you for your rates, and you can just send them a PDF rate guide, right? I think we've talked about that a few times here on my channel too. I think I even have a couple of videos about how to create a rate guide of your own, or rate card, however you want to say it. Tanya's here. Afternoon all. I was asked yesterday what I would charge for Royalty Share Plus and went off one of the pinned contracts on Discord. I had no clue, but it seemed reasonable to charge half. The thought process behind Royalty Share Plus and charging half your normal PFH rate is because, just to explain ACX's pay types, you've got royalty share, where you're sharing only in the profits of each sale of the book with the author, right? So you get 20% of each sale and the author gets 20% of each sale. And then you have per finished hour, or PFH, or pay for production, however you want to say it. And this is where you charge per finished hour. And a finished hour is about 9,300 words of narration. And that per finished hour rate is whatever you determine you want to set it at. Just know that industry standard for per finished hour audiobooks is $250 per finished hour. Now, you can start at $50 per finished hour, $100 per finished hour, $150 per finished hour. It's really up to you what you want to charge. Just keep in mind that a finished hour includes all of the hours of narration, editing, mastering, formatting. And in the beginning, it's going to take you a lot longer to do all of that, to complete that finished hour, than it will, a few years in. So it could potentially take you 5 to 8 hours to create a finished hour. So keep that in mind when you're determining your prices. So with royalty share and then per finished hour rates, industry standard, again, being $250 per finished hour, Royalty Share Plus is sort of a hybrid of the two. You share in the royalties, 20% and 20% with the author, and you get a per finished hour rate. And it's usually a lower rate than your standard per finished hour rate. So half, let's just say that your per finished hour rate is $200. If you decide to do Royalty Share Plus, you could agree on the royalties plus $100 per finished hour, knowing that you're getting something up front, or when you finish the book, right? In terms of payment, and then you're going to be sharing in the royalties going forward for at least 7 years, the contract with that book being on Audible. So that is why it's usually a lower per finished hour rate, because you're also going to be sharing in the royalties. So it's sort of a hybrid between the two. So I think that's reasonable. My cup of tea says, morning, y'all. Nice to be back in a live stream. Nice to have you here. Becca Sue says, good morning, afternoon, everyone. Tess is in Dracula. Haven't heard that in a while. Good afternoon. It's a beautiful day in Dracula. I love it. Anne says, good morning, VO friends. Fixer Phoner, it's a good morning. Good morning to you. Glowen is here. Hey, Glowen, haven't seen you in a while. Good afternoon, Angela and chat. Hope your coffee is hot. It's not, but it's still coffee. Still necessary. Not hot, but necessary. And I'm happy it's here. Maven, good afternoon, Maven. Elon Vital. I still think that's so pretty. Good afternoon, everyone. Reading Time with Poppy says hot cocoa. That's a good one. Do you have marshmallows? You need to have marshmallows in it. That's the only way to have hot cocoa. Spicy Caesar says, funny thing, I started my VO business doing non-narrating stuff like branding, websites, and audio engineering. So, hang on, I gotta adjust the legs. So by the time I got a book, I feel like I skipped a couple of lower pricing tiers. You started out with a lot more experience than the most of us do starting out. A lot of us are just not tech savvy at all. We don't internet, we don't do social media. We don't do anything technical on the computer at all, apart from, watching YouTube videos or buying stuff on, online shopping sites. So considering that, you have a lot more experience than most of us do at the point in which we started this endeavor. So yes, your pricing point is going to be a little bit different. And then also take that in consideration too, for those of you watching apart from Caesar. If you have computer skills, you have other skills apart from what you're now looking to offer with voiceover or audiobook narration. If you have audio engineering or audio editing or, something that you can use in conjunction with voiceover, then yeah, your price point is going to be a little bit higher than those of us that have nothing to offer apart from voiceover. So again, look at when you're researching rates, if you decide to go with researching what everybody else is charging, make sure that you're looking at comparable gigs to what you're offering. Right? You're looking at the services that the people are offering, that you're looking at their pricing structures. Make sure that it's all comparable, right? Across the board. Makes sense. Fixer Phoner says, I was grinding away on Upwork for years. Then I decided to do ACX. Got a book offer in like 15 minutes. Good for you. I feel like I wasted so much time when I could have been doing legit audiobooks the whole time. But you know what? What you learned from being on Upwork for all that time probably gave you a little bit of insight into how to market yourself, how to customer service, how to word things, right? I mean, it's still experience. It's still training, building your knowledge base. So don't look at it as wasted time. Maybe you were meant to go that route. You never know. Anne says, I've accepted the rate that rights holders are willing to offer me so far. I'd like to push that up. It should be the other way around, Anne. You decide what your price is, and you give that to rights holders. If a rights holder comes in and says, let's just say that your per finished hour rate is $100 per finished hour. If someone offers you $50, you can compromise and say, hey, my rate is $100. I'm willing to do $75, or just stick with my rate is $100. A lot of times authors don't know what is reasonable. They don't know what the industry standard is. They don't know how long it actually takes to create audiobooks. A lot of authors are brand new first-time authors that are self-publishing that don't really have any idea how all of this works. So you as the professional offer up your rate, and if they want to hire you at your rate, then they will do so. Sometimes they're just throwing out numbers because they don't know what is realistic. They don't know what is, reasonable. They don't know what your rate is, so they're just throwing out a number. So give them your number and then go from there. Right? That's what I would do, Anne. Eric says, good morning, Angela and all. Good question. I basically take what I can get at this point. I've had coaches and others say that I should charge more, but I'm just trying to find projects right now. I think Just like Anne, you need to decide what your pricing is. And I think once you start to have that mindset where you're charging what you're worth or what you're a little bit more comfortable with, the work will come. The work will come at the price point in which you are at. And you probably don't realize this, but that's how it works on places like Fiverr and Upwork. They match you. Your price point, they match you to people who are looking for projects at that price point. So once you raise your prices, you'll start to see clients coming in looking for something around that price point. So if you're getting feedback that you should be increasing your prices, and me hearing what you can do, Eric, I think you should also probably increase your prices. So just try it. If you're not seeing a whole lot of work right now, what is it going to hurt? Increase your prices and see what happens. It's not going to be like an overnight thing, but it could be, right? I have found that happen to me a lot of times on Fiverr, namely, where as soon as I increased my prices, more clients came in at that price point. And by the way, Fiverr likes the money too. So if you're charging more, they make more. So they might promote you more. Espa? So what could it hurt? Try it. Increase your prices. Anne says, my start was on ACX royalty share projects, as were mine. And I think a lot of people started that way too. Royalty share on ACX. Yes, ma'am. Kristen says, good morning. Good morning to you. Eric says to Anne, I can relate. I've mostly done royalty share as well. Now I'm trying to do royalty share plus or per finished hour. Anne says to Eric, me too. Becca Sue says, I'm looking forward to being able to say I got my start. LOL. Say it today. Say it today. I got started today. Right? If you haven't already. It's already done. In your head, it's done. I started. I'm working at this, of being a professional voice actor. Glowin says, I decided before I did my first audition, yes, I have done 2 since I returned from vacation last week. My pricing is going to be at market price versus my newbiness. If you've returned from vacation last week and you've only done 2 auditions, at least you've done some, right? At least you've done some auditions, but definitely do more. Submit more. Glowin says, in my perspective, the client doesn't need to know I'm just starting out. No, they don't. In the words of the famous lady, voiceover Angela, you're a professional. It's a mindset, right? If you're, and to Glowin's point, if you're writing out bios or filling out like about me's or profiles on any of these sites online that we find work at, whether it's a freelance marketplace or a pay-to-play, whatever it is, don't mention that you're brand new. Because even though, as I always say, be as transparent as possible and, realistic, wear your customer service hat and all those things, but you saying that you're brand new might inadvertently turn the client off, because those words will have a negative connotation right away. They might tell the client, even though it's not true, it'll tell the client that you don't know what you're doing. Right? Where you could have studied for months and months and months and got all the training in the world, and your sound is on point, your performance is on point, you know what you're doing. But if you say that you're brand new, or you're just starting out, or just joined, anything that indicates that you're new at all in any way, shape, or form, that will have a negative connotation inadvertently and tell the client that you don't know what you're doing. And you might be not seeing work just because of that. So don't ever say that you're brand new, that you just joined, that you just started. That doesn't need to be said. If you need to talk about something, talk about your equipment. That's what I did. I have broadcast quality equipment in my studio because I do. In my home-based, sound-treated space, right? I have a home-based, sound-treated studio with professional broadcast equipment. None of that is made up. None of that is farce. All of that is completely accurate. Talk about your equipment, what you can offer the client, not how new you are, right? Make your profiles, your about me's, your bios more customer-centric. What problems you can solve for your clients, not about how new and inexperienced you are. That's doing the opposite of what you want it to do. You want to tell the client that you can solve their problem. You can give them what they need. Because ultimately, what do they need? They need a voice that's going to, make the intention that they're looking for, or make the point that they're looking for with the voiceover in clear audio, quickly. Those are really the factors they need, and in a price point that they can afford. That's all you need to tell them. Don't tell them that you're new, because they might be clicking away from you as soon as they see that, because they just might, they don't know anything about you other than you're new. Really, at that point, they go, new, okay, well, they don't know what they're doing, so I'm going to look for someone else. Even though you may be amazing, right? I've got to stop this tangent. But don't mention that you're new. Becca Sue says, glowing, I love that. Rochelle says, if I can click on it, I like the just do it. Yes, just do it. Just do it. Don't just sit there idle going, I wish I could do it, but I don't have this, or I haven't learned this. You'll learn it. The best way to learn it is to do it. Just get in there. Just get started. Because you might be holding yourself back, telling yourself that you're procrastinating, right? You're not doing it because you think you still need to learn something. Get something, achieve something, talk to somebody, answer this question, whatever it is, just do it, and then you'll figure it out as you go. Right? Maven says, on ACX, for someone who is trying to land their first project, is it best to check just unspecified PFH, or should I also check unspecified? Think of it from the author's perspective. I'm brand new. I'm self-publishing my first novel. I don't know what is customary. I don't know what is typical. I don't know anything about audiobooks. I'm counting on whomever I get an audition from or whomever I hire to advise me on what is customary. I don't know anything about the prices. I'm open to it. I'm open to quotes because I just want to get an idea of how much this is going to cost me. I have no idea. I'm going to select unspecified because I don't have a clue. I'm counting on someone to tell me how much this is going to cost. So absolutely yes. I always just leave it open unless you're looking for something specific, but definitely use unspecified because those people are looking for you to tell them how much it's going to be because they don't know. Right? They're looking for the best deal. They're looking for the voice that works, the voice that is close enough to what they thought that they wanted when they were writing the book at a price they can afford. But they don't know what is customary, so you can tell them. So yes, absolutely select unspecified. Kristen says, I really like the mindset of early work being like a paid internship. I am currently narrating my first audiobook, and the experience I'm gaining is so valuable. Absolutely. And you wouldn't have learned any of that unless you just got in there and did it. Right? Just get in there and do it. Just do it. Do it. Caesar says, funny, improving my recording space and learning processing in my journey to audiobook narration made me a sound engineer. It wasn't until more than a year later that I picked up an audiobook job. So you kind of went backwards. Like most of us will get into the audiobook part and then learn the production side later because it's part of the process. And you kind of went the other way. See? Variables, different paths to get to, many different paths to get to where you want to be. So different for everybody. Glowen says to Maven, filter using them all. You want to get anything you can deem doable. Myself, I need to build my resume, so I choose them all. Becca says to Maven, I haven't landed anything yet, but I still keep my search open for all prices. You are here. That counts as starting. Yes. Well said, Anne. Rochelle says, I was in radio, TV broadcasting 12 years to include on-air, commercials, production, creating, writing, and voicing. Also, radio news, etc. Can that have a factor in pricing for voice acting? Yes, you have a little bit more experience than most of us starting at zero do. Absolutely. Because you not only understand probably the lingo, the terminology that most of us had to learn. You already know all that stuff. You already know how all of this works. You already know sort of like where the clients are coming from most of the time. You have like all of that back end knowledge that most of us don't have until a couple of years in. Not only that, but you have the writing experience as well. So yeah, that's going to affect your price point, and you're going to be at a higher price point than most of us do at ground zero. So absolutely. Your prices are going to need to reflect all of that experience that you already have. Paul says, Angela, I have to completely disagree with you about Gravy for the Brain's positioning. Maybe check their site out again, unless they've updated. I haven't been on there in a while, but based on what I'm hearing from other people, that is what it is. So if they have changed, then they have changed. So I'll go check them out. Joy says, hello, everyone, from cloudy, chilly Southfield, Michigan. If I were to get an audiobook commercial or anything, I'll check with GVAA rates. You continued somewhere? I think you might have been cut off, Joy. Caesar says, hard-headed, self-sufficient, teach myself everything is likely why I didn't do audiobooks until I became a sound engineer. And I took the scenic route, learning sound engineering, trial and many errors. Is it Kairos Fruition? What rights do narrators have regarding royalty and do's and don'ts of terms of agreement? What rights do we have in terms of royalty? Well, in terms of royalty, if you've signed a contract, let's just say that you're on ACX, you will receive 20% of every sale of every audiobook that is sold. That's basically what you got there. Do's and don'ts in terms of agreement. And coming to an agreement with a rights holder, perhaps. Keep in mind that when someone sends you an offer on ACX, I have to think that there's some sort of a template, right? Where ACX says, hey, you ready to send an offer? Here's a template of, what you can send the rights holder, or I'm sorry, the narrator, without the rights holder understanding that audiobooks, take time, or how much they are, or, all of those things. So it's just like a set number of days until the first 15-minute checkpoint and so on and so forth. Ultimately, if whatever's on the contract they send you or the offer that they send you that you don't agree with, whether it's the pricing that you think it's too low or the due dates are too soon and you need more time, you don't have to accept that. It could be the rights holder just kind of shooting in the dark because they don't know, or maybe they're on a tight deadline. Either way, you can send them back a message and say, hey, thank you for the offer, but I have a question about this. I'm going to need more time for this. Is that doable? Is that agreeable for you and your timeline? If they say yes, then they can either update the contract and send it to you again, and then you can accept that one, or you can accept the one they sent, and as long as you have it in writing, that there's a verbal exchange and an agreement. You guys came to an agreement about the timing specifically. Like if the contract says 7 days, but you both agreed that it would be 30 days until it was due, then that's fine too, as long as it's within ACX's message system. So ACX has access to that agreement. That's fine too. I hope that answers your question. Becca Sue says to Anne, that's true. I'm also Rebecca H. in the Platinum Group. No one can say I'm not trying. Jim is here. Good morning from Memphis. Maven says to Glowen, so keeping them all checked for project search, what about on my profile? If someone found me through a sample, would unspecified PFH let them know that my pricing is flexible? Yes. I mean, if you are flexible in your pricing, why not make that known? Right? If it's something that you want to do and you have the time and you're just a little bit away from whatever you've decided that your rate is, and you're flexible and you're willing to do it, why not? Don't overthink it. Jim says PFH starting at $50 sounds like a good starting point. That's where I started. My first book was $50, and then I moved up from there. I think the very next book I moved it up to $75 or $100, right? Again, I knew that I wasn't where I am now. I knew that I was just starting out, but I didn't want to charge my client for rates that I didn't feel that I was at the level of deserving yet. Right? I didn't want to charge someone for my incompetence at that point. It was like a paid internship. That's sort of how I looked at it. I was learning and growing, but still making something for my time. That's how I looked at it. Peak Parable says, I like to equate money for words similar to paid per hourly wage, hourly worker, versus royalty share equal to commission-based sales job. Leveraging your own social clout or prestige to make money. And says to Becca Sue, if I can click it, you are starting strong then by joining the Platinum group. I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad to hear that, you guys. Get a strong presence here today in the Platinum group. Rochelle Stewart says, good morning, Angela and all. Good morning to you. Jim asks if Dracula is a suburb of Transylvania. Glowen says to Maven, I interpret unspecified as we're going to negotiate a fair market price. Keep your I'm a professional in mind when negotiating. Perfectly stated, Glowen. Thank you. NZVO Nikki says, here from my new VO account, was previously here as Knickknack. The other day, Caesar told me how to zoom with control on Audacity, and I did it, and it's a game changer. See, Caesar's got some great tidbits. Caesar's got some great advice. Peak Parable says, when you guys do royalty share on audiobooks, if title is good quality potential and good profitable space, how much do you consider rights holders' social visibility versus none? How much weight do you give? If you're considering royalty share, then you want to make sure that that rights holder is going to market that book. And you should also market that book, because if you're both looking to make money on each book sold, then you want to sell a lot of books. So if you're making the decision on whether or not to take a royalty share book, then absolutely yes. You want to see that that rights holder has got some good reviews on that book, that the book is maybe already selling well in print or, e-versions. And you also want to see if perhaps he's already got a About Me page, he's got a website, he's got social media pages, and he's actively talking about the release of the book. You want to see that he's marketing it, that he's invested in it, and most authors are, because, writing and releasing a book is a big deal for people, and as it should be, because it is. So, but you want to see that they're making the effort in that, marketing attempt to build some buzz around that book. So absolutely yes. And in the same vein, that author is also going to be expecting you to be doing the same, which you should be, so you can make more money. Sell more books, make more money. So it is definitely a deciding factor on whether or not you want to choose that royalty share contract. Now, if you have somebody who is just using ChatGPT to spit out books, right? Because that is their angle, is just to make books, to make money on volume versus hyping up the book that maybe they wrote all by themselves for years and put blood, sweat, and tears into it. That's a whole different thing. So if they're just, farming AI books out there, that's something different and might not want to consider. I don't know. It's up to you ultimately what you want to do. But researching the author is definitely a factor in making that decision. Dwight says, I suggest this to my organization mentees. PFH, first couple books, 2 to 7 books at 50, 8 to 10 at 75, 12 to 15 at 10 to 150. I'm sorry, 100 to 150. 15 and up to 175, and up 20 and up 200 to 250 as soon as you are good enough. It's a good rule of thumb. But ultimately, do what you want to do. You know, if you want to jump up by, instead of 25 per, then jump up from 50 to 100 to 150 to 200. Do it however you want to do it, right? You'll know. You'll feel it in your bones when it's time. Fixer Phoner says, I hate the editing process. Join the club. So I got a guy that I give a % of each project's overall payment. It cuts my work in half. I just upload the files to a shared Google Drive. He edits, uploads them back into the shared folder, and I submit to the client. It's been working well. Make them meet you where you're at. Caesar says, I meant to say, I've heard Eric Grimes' narrating and acting ability. He can definitely bump his prices up a couple of notches. Or 8. I agree. I hope you're listening, Eric. Jim says, my father used to sell metal cabinets at $75 a piece. They didn't move until he went up to $110 a piece. Exactly. Caesar says, wish I had more broadcast quality equipment in my studio. You have more than anybody else I know. They would go well with the other broadcast quality equipment that's already in my studio. Tanya says, my first rights holder was a $50 to $100 ACX job. I gently made it clear that if he wanted me for the next 2 books in the series he was planning, we would have to renegotiate. He even paid me a little extra. Good. And usually authors will tell you in the beginning if they have, like a multi-book series. And if that's the case and they want you for all of them, then you could pre-negotiate like a bulk deal. Like, because you have a 3-book series and because you want them to be all to be the same narrator, being me, instead of $200 per finished hour, I'll charge you, a lower rate, whatever you decide on, because you're getting 3 books instead of just the 1. You can do that too. You can pre-negotiate that stuff. Glowen says, Spicy Caesar, do you have room for more? I don't know if he has room for more. Jim says, have been recording for 9 months now and have gotten the quality up to having no issues in Audiolab. Good for you. Erica says, just going for it is wild, adventurous, unknown, and fun. It's a great way to look at it. You never know what could happen if you just jump in. Fixer Phoner says, my setup is a Yeti mic. I'm in the process of saving for a condenser mic and a mic shield in a large open room in my apartment. And I still get work. Anyone can do it. Joy says, just dive on in. Jim says, what do you do when you find out over time that the grammar, spelling, etc. are way off quality? You could either reach out to the rights holder and ask if they did give you the final draft of their manuscript. It's happened to me more than once where the rights holder gave me the wrong edit version of the manuscript. And if it is the final draft and you're still not vibing with it, you're having an issue with the grammar quality or whatever it is, you can decide at that point to cancel the contract, to gracefully bow out, or you can suck it up and finish it. It's up to you, whichever way you want to go. Caesar says to Joy, agreed, but making sure the pool has water kind of helps. Maven says, I am also someone who is starting with previous audio engineering experience. It is helping a lot as I learn how my knowledge transfers to this new voiceover process. Well, there you go. Caesar says, nice. Kind of makes it more fun. I realize a lot of the stuff that happens in the DAW can be incredibly cryptic to a lot of people. It's a lot of lines and numbers and measurements. Let's see if we can find another question. Maven says, I'm finding it helpful to have a recording checklist in place with all the specific numbers to check, like amplitude statistics. Yes, that is definitely something that I recommend, especially if you're just getting started out and you're still in the part where you're learning your DAW, you're learning your recording software. Have a notepad with you. Because before you have your effects rack set and saved and everything is just as it needs to be effects wise, make notes, because you'll forget when you're still trying to find what works, right? You have this effect at this setting with this setting and this setting, and then you made a change. You want to note that change. Right? Have a notebook on your desk as you're doing this so you can kind of keep track of what you did when. Speaking from experience, because if you find like these effects, you go through all this trial and error. I remember, I'm having flashbacks, PTSD of this. You're trying all these different effects and all these different settings, and then you find one that works, but then you forget what it was. Trust me, you're not going to remember all of these, so write them down. And then you forget what the settings were, and then you have to go back and re-record and trying to find where you were if you didn't write it down. It's so disheartening and such a waste of time. So just have a notebook so you can keep track of what effects you're using, what settings they're at, so on and so forth. Trust me. Or like processes, keeping track of what processes you applied. Jim says, does PFH always put all the money up front? Do you set a rate based on word count? No, you decide your rate and then you stick to that rate on the book per word count. So your per finished hour rate is going to be per finished hour. So that's going to be 9,300 words. So if it's 30,000 words or 200,000 words, your per finished hour rate is the same no matter the word count. The only time that's going to change is when you increase your per finished hour rate, right? And it doesn't have to be paid up front. It could be, I always recommend getting 50% of the final cost up front, because that dissuades any kind of scammers, right? Because scammers generally don't want to pay anything. But if I'm charging, excuse me, like if the book is $500, let's just say, all said and done, it's $500. I tell the client that I will invoice them for 50% upfront it'll be $250. They'll get an invoice from me for $250 that's due upfront. And then the remaining balance of $250, which will also be invoiced via PayPal when the book is complete and all the revisions, if any, are done. That's how I word it. You're setting the expectation. There's no gray areas. Everything's explained. I'm going to invoice you via PayPal for $250 upfront. Once that's collected, once that's paid, I will get started. And then the remaining balance of $250, which will be invoiced via PayPal, is due when the book is completed, right? Make sure that you say all of that. It sets the expectation. It answers all the questions before they even have them. It'll save you a whole lot of brain damage. Trust me. Nikki says, the grammar and spelling is a good question, something I've struggled with a bit in my first couple books. Seems like I need to just read it as it is. But then if someone is listening and hears, know where you're going with this, Nikki. Keep in mind that the author is paying you for a service. The service is giving voice. You're creating a audible version of their book. You didn't write it. These are not your viewpoints. All you're doing is giving voice to it. You're performing a service. You're being hired to perform a service. But if you cannot connect with the copy because it's written too poorly, or you don't like what you're saying, you're not comfortable with the context, whatever it is, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. And also another question I get a lot is like gender and race, right? If someone hired me for an autobiography, but it's written by a male, I don't automatically turn it down. It's ultimately up to the author what they want to represent their book. If they're thinking that the book they wrote about themselves would be better served by a female, then so be it. That's their decision. They're hiring you for a service. You are there to fulfill a service, and that service is creating an audiobook version of their book. That's it. You didn't write it. You didn't edit it. These are not your viewpoints. You are just performing a service. So just look at it that way. Oh, and don't be tempted to change the book. If you do find typos and you can reach out to the rights holder and tell them, hey, I found a typo on page 56. That way they can correct it in all of their other copies too. But if they're expecting you to proof it or to proofread it or anything else, then you should be charging for that service as well. That's an additional service above and beyond creating an audiobook. Proofing, right? Being the final set of eyes in the editing process before the audiobook is made. That's an additional service that you can charge for. I wanted to get that in there. Eric says, thank you so much, Caesar and Angela. The Platinum Group is a gold mine for voice artists. If you're not a Platinum member yet, you really should be. Also, apply some pressure to that like button. Yes. Caesar says, please remember that Audiolab can only measure so much. Audiolab can't detect distortions, sibilance, harshness, over-processing, or a lack of dynamics control. Please learn to trust and use your ears. To Caesar's point, Audiolab is only checking for ACX standards, that you're meeting ACX's standards. It does not account for quality, is basically what Caesar's saying. Jim says, Jason Levine has made editing fun for me. His YouTube channel, very helpful. Pure Playa says, I learned the hard way to write my effects down because my laptop broke down. And I had to use my wife's, but didn't remember what settings I had on the effects. You definitely write them down. Write them down. From experience, write them down. Caesar says to Eric, agreed. Apply some pressure to the like button, but not more than 35 psi. Jim says, where can I find a list of all the online payment systems? I am told to offer more than one system to the customer. I only use PayPal. Because PayPal is widely accepted on all of the platforms that I use. Sending an invoice through PayPal, the client does not need a PayPal account to pay it. They can use a check, a credit card, a debit card. I use PayPal. I mean, if you're looking for something other than just simply using Google, and it'll probably give you a bunch of different options to choose from. Dylan says, PayPal is a very different service. Okay. Pure Playa, Caesar says to Pure Playa, says that happened to me too. Audition had a bad crash and all my presets were lost. Fortunately, when that happened, I was already a sound engineer. Rebuilding them was tedious but trivial. Nikki says, that all being said, any tips on adding available services like editing? I would make it known that you offer these services. If it's like on ACX where you can't like offer like a la carte services, you could make it part of your dialogue with the client beforehand. You could say, hey, thank you for the offer. I just wanted to see if you haven't had, I wanted to make it known if you haven't had the ability to have a final pass through with an editor on your manuscript before the audiobook is created, to let you know that I offer the service to proof the manuscript one last time before we create the audiobook, and this is what I charge. Whether it's X amount of dollars per X amount of words, however you want to do it, you could make that known. You can make it part of like your pre-negotiation verbiage, and then that author might say, oh yes, you know what, I've totally forgot to do that. I would like to have one set of eyes on all of this before we create the audiobook. And that way, if you do find anything, I can update all the other versions as well. So everything is correct together, right? All the different versions, meaning the ebook, the print copy, all of that stuff is now corrected. So make all that stuff known up front. Caesar says to Dylan, okay, making fun of me. Jim says, what do you use to manage the business side, numbers-wise? Money-wise or tracking-wise? Money-wise, PayPal. Tracking-wise, I use QuickBooks, self-employed. Pure Playa says to Caesar, I'm definitely still a beginner, so it was a headache for me. Hey, Lisa, I haven't seen you in a while. The book I'm working on right now is an anthology, 10 different authors. One of the stories has a horrendous amount of errors. I highlighted them and sent back to the publisher to correct. The book was published in 2023. Wow. Josie says, for others that have just started recently, how many auditions did you submit before you finally got a contract? 2, if an author doesn't use you, will the audition be removed from my projects? For me, answering that question, number 1 is going to be different for everybody. Some people get a book on their first audition. Some submit 200 auditions before they see a book. It's going to be different for everybody. For me, I think it was about, I think I did about 8 auditions before I saw an offer. If an author doesn't use you, will the audition generally no? No, because you can also list it as a sample as well, and it won't be removed until you remove it, if that's what you're asking. Okay, Dylan and Caesar are making fun of me. Pure Playa says, I only did 8 auditions before I got my first contract, which I'm actually still working on now. Taking me longer because of a cold I'm trying to get over. Feel that. Always ask for an additional couple weeks. Always give yourself a buffer when you're negotiating the time aspect of how long it's going to take you to create this audiobook. If you realistically think it's going to take you about 3 weeks to produce this audiobook, give yourself 5. At least 4 weeks. Because you never know when you're going to get sick, someone in the family gets sick, you want to take a vacation, you just need a day of rest. Give yourself that buffer. And if you don't end up using any of those extra days, you're delivering it early and being a hero. Potentially get yourself a tip or 2. You know, give yourself a buffer, extra time. Nikki said, thank you so much. Lisa says to Josie, I did about 10 auditions before my first audiobook. Whoops. Nikki says, I was able to get my first after 8 to 10 auditions. Nailed down a few, took a break from auditions. Now I'm back and struggling to land something. Just keep going. Keep going. Jim says, your samples are your business. No one can decide what's there. Paul says, I submitted over 70 auditions before I got an offer. Now average and 1 in about 15. Yeah, but the point is, for those of you that are kind of ruminating over how many auditions you've submitted and not seen a book offer, you just have to keep going. Because what you're doing is you're throwing out an audition in your voice and your unique approach and perspective to someone who may or may not be looking for your voice. So the more auditions you do, the better your chances are of being heard by the person who's looking for you. But none of that will happen if you don't audition. You have to keep auditioning. You have to keep marketing yourself, presenting yourself to multiple clients in the hopes that they're looking for your voice. Because even the client, they can't, even if they articulate what they're looking for, they may not fully understand until they hear it, right? It's kind of one of those, like, when you know kind of things, right? So even if I was looking for a male voice with a general American accent, and then I heard all of these auditions, and then maybe even I heard someone like Caesar who has a little bit of an accent, and I went, oh my God, that sounds so much better than what I was thinking. I'm going to hire him. But you have to keep auditioning to have those opportunities, right? So just keep auditioning and it will eventually come. Pure Playa says, the RH, it's very nice. She's giving me an extension, telling me not to worry about the timing. Most authors realize that we're all human. And we have human things that happen, like getting sick or, major life events happening. Maybe, most people will understand that and give you a little bit of extra time if you need it. You just have to ask. Dylan said, we wouldn't make fun of you if we didn't like you. Yes. I think I'm going to hear P-Pal for quite some time, though. As I should, because it was funny. That's okay. That's okay. Dylan says, to Angela's point, I got 3 books with my first 12 auditions. Then I didn't get another one for around 20. It's not always your fault. I don't think it's ever your fault, per se. You are at the mercy of the voice and the RH has in their head. Yeah, for sure. And there's no way for us to know that. There's no way for us to know exactly what they're looking for, even if they try to articulate it. It's when they hear it, they will know, kind of a thing. Caesar says, I actually did that for my first book. I ignored the American English requirement and did it in my natural accent because I was tired and apathetic. I got the job. See? If it's something that interests you, audition for it. Even if you might be a little bit outside of what they say they're looking for, you never know. So that should even widen your opportunities right there, right? How many books you audition for. You never know. All right, you guys, it's about that time. I have got a ton of work to get back to, so I will be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel. If there's something that you guys want to talk about as a group, or there's something specific that you want to know more about and get multiple perspectives on it, then that would be probably something great for this channel here. So post your comments, post your questions, either, down below on this video if you're a team replay, or, send me a message directly in the community part of the channel here. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.